Kerry O'Brien recently said at the Logie Awards what many social media users have known for a long time, and I'll quote it verbatim. We, the journalists, have to share responsibility for the great failures of our time, a time of enormous momentum challenge, failures of politics, failures of journalism, failures of society in the end, and we, the journalists, have not cut through the fake news effectively. We have not properly held politicians to account. Can Kerry expand on that and give some examples?
Kerry O'Brien.
Oh, well, I haven't got the speech prepared. Look, I mean, it's a statement of the obvious to me. And climate change was a classic case in point, because there was a debate that has been going on since 1979, where the only change has been that the science has become more and more and more profoundly clear that this is an existential crisis. And journalism has been at the heart of the conversation. We have reported it, we've asked the questions, we've covered it every which way. And even when charlatans turn up claiming to be authorities on climate change, we give them space. And I think journalism has to actually confront this issue now. And I'm not for one moment urging that we become activists. But I think that the science is so beyond doubt that there is no longer a point in continuing to listen to arguments that it's not. Unless somebody came up with a really serious, factually based set of premises as to why we should listen to them on this against the proof of the climate change science, then what is the point of listening? And I mean, journalism is supposed to partly be about sifting through the facts, sorting out the dross, and disposing of the dross and sticking to the facts.
Kerry, just more broadly, are you making a broader claim than climate change, that journalists have ignored or failed to confront fake news? Because that was built into your speech, that notion, and I want to hear from the other journalists on the panel about this as well.
But when I first came into journalism, I can remember jokes about journalists being down the bottom of the pile, and I can remember the joke about the two guys at the bar. And one says, "What do you do?" And the bloke says, "Oh, well, I'm a travelling salesman." And the guy says, and what do you do? And the bloke says, "Well, look, my wife's coming here in a moment, so I'd rather you don't let on what I'm telling you. But I'm a journalist. But my wife thinks I play piano in the brothel." And it was interchangeable. It could be a journalist, or it could be a politician, or it could be a used car salesman. But that's, I mean, there's always been this view of journalists for as long as I've been one, which is 50 years, that people are deeply ambivalent about journalists, and they make their own decisions about those they believe and those they don't, and those that are in between. And not much has changed, except that when we look at the complexities of society today, and we look at the central, you know, we actually, and I'm as guilty as anybody, I've argued for a very long time about understanding that journalism is at the heart of democracy. It is one of the fundamental underpinnings of democracy. But we don't always live up to that. And it's abundantly clear that we don't always live up to that. So if you're going to make the boast, then question your own behaviour and your own professionalism and your own integrity in the process. And I do think that when you see something as important as climate change in the space it's in now, and you see the obfuscation at a political level, and I'm sorry, Paul, but not many people who are informed in this day and age feel that your policies on climate change are credible. And to talk about meeting your targets, what, 26%? Europe, I think, is between 40 and 60. And where you're talking about going back to 2005 levels, they're talking about going back to 1990. I mean, these are parts of the reality. And now we've got the latest science report that's been presented to the UN saying that we've got to actually go much further. Otherwise, we're looking at not just 1.5 to 2% increase, but as much as 3% or even 4%.
OK, I want to hear from the others on the broader point about journalism.
Yeah.
Jan, Fran.
I feel like I now have to be the one defending journalists when everybody hates us, but here we go. We're in a spot of trouble. Journalism is in trouble. It's not what it was 10 or 20 years ago. Kerry, I absolutely accept your point that we do have to sift through the dross, rather. Unfortunately, there's so much more dross to sift through and we have far less resources to do it. We are trying to have these nuanced conversations through these mediums that allow for none. And that is a very big problem in terms of how we shape our national conversation around issues of climate change. Not only do journalists now have to, of course, report the truth, but they actually spend quite a considerable amount of their time trying to swat away misinformation. And the way that misinformation spreads online is like nothing we've seen before, because this is the first time that we've had these mediums to have these conversations. There's a saying that a lie will spread halfway around the world and the truth will come limping after. It's almost as though we've got to do the job of two people now, which is to report the news, but also to correct all of this stuff that's being said. And that's a very difficult thing. I look at a place like Fairfax, which is now 9. It's half what it used to be. News Corp has laid off a bunch of people. There's always talk about the denigration of local news, which I think is extremely concerning. So journalism has taken a very bad hit, I think, in the last 10 years, and we've seen more change in the industry in the last 5 than what we have possibly in the last 50. So I take your point in that we don't know, or not that we don't know, but perhaps we're not holding people to account in the way that we should, and we're not having the conversation the way that we should. And my question genuinely, and this is to everyone and also to you, Kerry, how do we do it?
Well,
no, I'm not going to.
Oh, okay.
Can I give you, can I give you 20 seconds?
No, I've got
20 seconds.
I do think it's important that we weigh up all the factors here. So yes, journalism is under considerable pressure, and the commercial, news and Fairfax formerly, now 9, facing the pressure of Facebook and Google and the digital platforms, and of course the ACCC has just done a big review of that. And similarly in other countries, the Cairncross review has just come down in the UK looking at the impact of the internet on journalism. These are some complex and challenging issues. On the other hand, what the internet has allowed is that if you want to go and see a source document, you can do that immediately. That was impossible even 20 years ago. You had to accept the paraphrased version of what was reported in a newspaper. So there's now a capacity for citizens to be better informed if you choose to be. So I think we need to weigh up both some of the challenges but also some of the strengths.